Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into a thought-provoking question that has perplexed theologians, philosophers, and believers for centuries. If God is sinless, did He create sin? This topic raises important discussions about the nature of God, the existence of evil, and the philosophical implications of free will. So let's explore this intricate concept together. Was sin truly a result of human choice? Or was it woven into the very fabric of creation from the beginning? Was it inevitable, even orchestrated by the same God who is described as all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-good? Let's pause for a moment and look at Isaiah 45:7, where God states, "I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil." Wait, God creates evil? The very concept we've been taught to blame on Satan, temptation, and humanity's weakness suddenly gets a mention from God Himself. Is this verse just an anomaly, a fluke? Or does it reveal something much deeper, something that could change everything we think we know? If God created everything, does that include the potential for evil too? Think about it. You can't have free will without the option to choose wrong, and you can't define wrong without a system that identifies right. Sin didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was part of the design, a natural consequence of having rules in the first place. But who established those rules? Let's follow this intriguing thread. God places Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, a paradise filled with everything they could want, but there's one major rule: don't eat from the tree of knowledge. Now, here's the kicker. Why put that tree there in the first place? An all-knowing God would have anticipated that curiosity, desire, and free will would lead them straight to it. So, are we saying God didn't see this coming? Did Adam and Eve really manage to blindside Him? Or could it be more likely that the entire setup was intentional, a test they were destined to fail? Let's dive deeper. If sin is merely a human failing, a mistake, then why was the potential for sin ingrained in creation from the very start? If God knew Adam and Eve would stumble and still set the stage for it, isn't it possible that sin serves a greater purpose? Maybe, just maybe, sin wasn't an afterthought, but a crucial piece of the puzzle. Perhaps it's a way to guide humanity towards something greater, something more profound, like moral consciousness, free will, or understanding the difference between good and evil. If God created everything, including the framework for sin, does that mean He's responsible for it? Or is it all part of a grand design we're still trying to comprehend? We're still trying to unravel this mystery because, let's be honest, it's tough to grasp the idea of an all-powerful, all-knowing deity creating a system that's so easily broken without anticipating its downfall. Sin didn't just happen by chance. It was intricately woven into the fabric of creation. So let's get to the core of the issue. Who is truly responsible for sin? Was it God who set the rules, fully aware they'd be broken? Was it humanity exercising free will in a world overflowing with temptation? Or could it be that sin wasn't created by anyone at all? It's simply a byproduct, an unavoidable consequence of freedom and choice, a chaotic dance that fell into place. Let's tackle the God question first. If God is all-knowing, then He didn't just create the potential for sin, He foresaw it. Those rules, they weren't random. The consequences weren't some unexpected fallout. God crafted the entire system. But here's where it gets tricky. If God designed the framework where sin could emerge, does that mean He indirectly created sin itself? Think about it. God established the boundaries, the forbidden fruit, the serpent, every element necessary for sin to unfold. So, are we left with the unsettling idea that the very setup that allows for free will is also the one that leads to sin? Are we really comfortable saying that the ultimate creator of sin is also the one who claims to be perfect goodness? The mainstream argument is that humanity is to blame Adam and Eve, with their curiosity and choices, are the culprits, right? But hold on a minute. If we have free will, isn't the potential for choosing wrong part of the package deal? Humans weren't born into a blank slate world where wrong didn't exist. They were placed in an environment where the possibility of sin was literally hanging from a tree. It's like throwing a match into a dry forest and then being surprised when it catches fire. Sure, you could argue that humanity, with its free will, made a conscious decision to sin. But even that feels too simplistic, too black and white. Adam and Eve weren't acting in isolation. They were navigating a system designed by someone else. Their actions weren't just random acts of rebellion. They were a natural consequence of being placed in a world where temptation was built right in. So, how much of their decision was truly theirs, and how much was shaped by the system they were in? This brings us to a third possibility: chaos. Perhaps sin didn't need a creator at all, because once freedom existed, so did the potential for wrongdoing. When it comes to chaos, the rules of good and evil, right and wrong, create a tension. In a world of perfect order, where there are no choices, there's no mess, no sin. But that's not the world we have. The moment humans were given the freedom to act and choose, chaos became inevitable. Sin is simply the price of freedom. So, who do we hold responsible? Is it God who designed this intricate system? Humanity who made the choices? Or is it just the natural outcome of free will, the chaos that accompanies creation? One thing is certain: sin wasn't an accident, nor was it a mere one-time mistake. It's woven into the very fabric of our reality, something we inherited from the very beginning. And maybe that's the real question we should be asking: not who created sin, but whether it was ever meant to be avoided in the first place. Now, here's the next big question. If free will is the foundation of sin, does that mean sin was inevitable the moment free will came into existence? Free will is something we've been taught to cherish, the ultimate gift from God, right? The freedom to make our own choices and shape our lives. But here's the hidden catch. The moment free will enters the equation, the possibility of sin becomes unavoidable. You see, free will doesn't come with training wheels. It's not a tool that only works in the right direction. The very ability to choose inherently includes the risk of choosing wrongly. So, if free will is truly free, then sin was always an option from the start. This means that the moment God granted humanity free will, He handed us the keys to both righteousness and destruction. It's a double-edged sword. The capacity to choose good means we must also have the ability to choose evil. There's no escaping that reality. Think about it. Without free will, we'd just be robots, pre-programmed to do the right thing. But with free will comes real consequences and genuine stakes. You can't have virtue without the option of vice. That's the trade-off. So, was sin really a failure of humanity, or was it simply the natural consequence of the freedom we were given? If sin was inevitable, once free will was granted, it raises an intriguing question. Did God know humanity would fall? If He did, and still chose to give us free will, then isn't sin part of the design? A calculated risk, perhaps, or even a necessary aspect of our existence. Once we view sin as less about rebellion and more about the inherent cost of freedom, it changes everything. It's like handing someone a loaded gun and telling them not to shoot. The temptation is always there. This leads us to a crucial point. When we discuss sin, we often frame it as disobedience, as if humanity deliberately set out to defy God. But what if sin is simply a byproduct of our nature? The moment we were created with free will, the potential for sin was born. It was inevitable. It's not that Adam and Eve were flawed or malicious. They were simply the first beings to exercise the power of choice in a world where that choice included the risk of failure. In fact, you could argue that sin isn't just about breaking rules. It's about the complexity of moral freedom. It's the shadow cast by free will, an unavoidable aspect of making real decisions. Without decision-making power, there can be no sin. But take away free will, and you strip away what makes us human, our ability to grow, learn, and evolve beyond our beginnings. Now, here's where everything we think we know about Adam and Eve gets flipped on its head. They're often painted as the ultimate villains in this story. But what if their actions were simply part of a larger narrative about the journey of humanity itself? We often frame Adam and Eve as the first sinners, but what if they weren't rebels against God? What if they were simply victims of a divine setup? Think about it. Adam and Eve didn't just stumble into sin. They were placed in a garden with one forbidden tree, and that tree was right there, in plain sight, fully accessible, almost as if it was meant to be discovered. Does that sound like a test of loyalty, or does it feel more like a trap? Let's take a closer look at the tree itself, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Here we have Adam and Eve, two beings created with curiosity, intelligence, and free will, wandering in a paradise that seems perfect except for one rule: don't touch that tree. What's even more perplexing is that God, who is supposedly all-knowing, was fully aware of what would unfold. He knew the serpent would slither in, knew Eve would be intrigued, and knew Adam would follow suit. So, was this really about disobedience, or were Adam and Eve merely playing their part in a much larger plan? And let's not forget, they were created without any understanding of good and evil. They didn't even know what wrong meant until after they tasted the fruit. It's almost like giving a child a loaded gun and then being shocked when something goes horribly wrong. When everything goes wrong, we must remember that Adam and Eve weren't fully capable of understanding the consequences of their actions. They were naive by design. Yet, they're blamed for a choice they couldn't possibly comprehend. Is that justice, or is it part of some cosmic setup? Now, let's consider the serpent, often depicted as the embodiment of evil. Traditionally, he's seen as the villain of the story, but what if he was merely fulfilling a necessary role? The serpent didn't force them to eat the fruit. He offered them knowledge and presented them with a choice. It's hard to overlook the fact that after tasting the fruit, Adam and Eve gained awareness, understanding, and yes, wisdom. So, was the serpent truly the tempter, or was he the catalyst for human growth? If Adam and Eve hadn't eaten the fruit, would they have remained in their ignorant, childlike state forever? Was that paradise? Or is it stagnation? Let's rethink the entire setup. If Adam and Eve were always meant to fall, and if their sin was part of a preordained plan, then we must reconsider everything we thought we knew. Maybe the fall wasn't the tragic failure of humanity, but rather the first step toward human evolution. Adam and Eve weren't villains. They were the pioneers of consciousness, moral awareness, and choice. In fact, the entire narrative begins to shift from a story of rebellion to an invitation to grow. Perhaps the true purpose of the garden wasn't to keep them from knowledge, but to propel them toward it. Humanity was innocent, but the purpose of the garden was to offer them the chance to evolve, to move from ignorance to enlightenment. However, with that knowledge came a heavy price, the burden of understanding good and evil, and living in a world where sin and virtue coexist. In many versions of the story, especially within mainstream Christian teachings, the serpent is equated with Satan, the ultimate personification of evil. But here's a fun fact. The text in Genesis never actually calls the serpent Satan. That connection was introduced much later through interpretations, commentaries, and evolving theology. In the original Hebrew text, the serpent is simply a serpent. Yes, it's crafty, but there's no explicit link to Satan or any cosmic evil force. So why did later interpretations make that connection? Consider this. You have a story about the first humans placed in a paradise with just one rule. It seems almost too simple and straightforward to truly capture the weight of what happens next, the fall of mankind and the introduction of sin. To amplify the drama, you need a villain. Enter Satan. But if we strip away these later interpretations, we begin to see a different narrative, one that focuses on human growth and the complexities of choice, rather than painting it solely as a tale of rebellion against a wicked force. This leaves us with a much more ambiguous figure, a serpent that talks and offers knowledge. Is that evil, or is it something entirely different? Let's examine the serpent's actions. The serpent doesn't lie. In fact, everything it says to Eve is true. It claims, "You will not surely die," adding that your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Spoiler alert, that's exactly what happens. Adam and Eve don't drop dead after eating the fruit. Instead, they gain knowledge and become aware of good and evil, just as the serpent promised. So, was the serpent truly deceiving them, or was it simply presenting them with the truth, just not the whole truth? And what about the serpent's motives? The traditional explanation is that Satan, as the ultimate antagonist of God, sought to corrupt humanity, pulling them away from their innocence and leading them into sin. But what if the serpent wasn't acting out of malice? What if its role was to offer humanity a choice, a vital opportunity to evolve? After all, what is free will without the chance to choose something other than what you're told? Here's where things get philosophical, challenging us to rethink the very nature of temptation, choice, and the journey of humanity. To grasp this question, we must first understand the nature of God. In many religious traditions, God is viewed as omniscient, omnipotent, and entirely good. This characterization leads to a paradox when we consider the existence of sin. If God is perfect and sinless, how could he possibly create sin? Some theologians argue that God created a world with free will, allowing humans to choose between good and evil. This raises an important point. While God created the possibility of sin, he did not create sin itself. Instead, sin is a result of human choices that deviate from God's intended order. Understanding God's nature helps us comprehend the complexities of sin and human agency. The concept of free will is central to this discussion. If God is sinless and omnipotent, why does he allow sin to exist? The answer lies in the gift of free will. God, in his wisdom, granted humanity the ability to make choices. This freedom is essential for genuine love and relationship. Without free will, love would be meaningless. It would be akin to programming a robot to love without the ability to choose. However, with free will comes the potential for sin. People can choose to act against God's will, leading to moral failures and suffering. Thus, God's creation of free will is not the same as creating sin, but allows for the existence of sin as a consequence of human decisions. Theological perspectives on sin vary widely across different faiths. In Christianity, sin is often defined as any action that goes against God's will, leading to separation from him. Some believe that sin originated with the fall of Adam and Eve, as described in Genesis. Others argue that sin has always existed as a potentiality within the created order. In any case, it is important to note that God's intention for creation was not for sin to flourish. Instead, he desires a world where love, compassion, and righteousness prevail. Understanding these theological nuances can help clarify the relationship between God's sinlessness and the existence of sin. Another significant aspect of this discussion is the role of evil within God's plan. Many theologians contend that God allows evil and suffering to exist to fulfill a greater purpose. This perspective is often referred to as the greater good argument. According to this view, God can bring about good even through sinful actions and events. For example, the story of Joseph in the Bible illustrates how God used Joseph's betrayal and suffering to ultimately save many people. This suggests that while sin is not created by God, he can still use it to achieve his divine purposes. The mystery of how God interacts with evil invites deeper reflection on the complexities of his nature and intentions. The concept of sin is not confined to Christianity. It appears in various forms across different religions. In Islam, for example, sin, or danbi, is viewed as any act that goes against Allah's commandments. Muslims believe that Allah is merciful and provides guidance through the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. While Allah is sinless and just, the existence of sin is tied to human actions and intentions. In Hinduism, the idea of sin is more nuanced, often linked to the law of karma. Actions, good or bad, influence one's future lives. Here, sin is understood as an imbalance in one's actions that disrupts dharma, or righteous living. These varying perspectives highlight that while the concept of sin may differ, the overarching theme of human responsibility and the nature of divine goodness remains a common thread across faiths. Welcome to Blessovia Science TV, where we take you on an exhilarating journey through the cosmos and unravel the mysteries of science. We are excited to offer you the opportunity to become a valued member of our ever-growing community of cosmic enthusiasts and knowledge seekers. Exclusive access to cosmic content. As a member of Blessovia Science TV, you will gain exclusive access to a treasure trove of cosmic content, including documentaries, interviews with leading scientists, space missions updates, and awe-inspiring visualizations of the universe, live Q, and sessions with experts. Your membership will grant you the chance to participate in live Q and sessions with renowned scientists, astronomers, and space explorers. Get your burning questions answered by those who push the boundaries of human knowledge. Embark on a journey that spans the cosmos and join us in unraveling the secrets of the universe. Become a Blessovia Science TV member today, and together we will reach for the stars. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, and share. Don't forget to leave your comment.